Good morning, and welcome to Magic in Mind. My name is Maggie Rose Cunningham, and it's Monday the 21st of August. We are in our waxing moon phase. We've passed the new moon in Ansu's, and we're exploring the path of the magician. I'll share something with you which comes as a surprise to me. I didn't realise that this was the case, that there is no definitive word for a group of humans. There's lots of different words, but there's no, you have a pack of wolves or a pride of lions, a herd of sheep. All of these different things we have a name, but there isn't one for humans, which really surprises me. And I was thinking about this and thinking, what would I choose? So I want to know, as you're coming and you're arriving, let me know what would you choose as your name for your pack, your herd. What would you choose? Your chosen people, let's say. Love you to put that in the comments. It would be really helpful as well if you would say hello in the comments as you arrive, because Facebook is doing some odd things today. So although I can see that we are live, I don't have any feedback at this point. The screen has gone blank. So I'm going to keep going. But if you're here, if you could say something in the comments, that would be great, so that I know that you can see me and that we're going live. And if not, I'll restart momentarily if no one arrives. So we shall see how that goes. But hopefully people will arrive quite soon. So we are looking at the theme of today is the question of what do you do when no one is in charge? What do you do when no one is in charge? And this comes up. Hi Esther, hi Maggie, yay, I'm really glad that you can see me. That is good. I'm here, she says, excellent. So I'm really glad that you're there, even though I can't see anything. We'll keep going. I can see your comments, and that's the important thing. Literally, Facebook has left the building at this point. We're looking at this theme because we're looking at the pathway of the magician, and more than any of the other parts of the magical self, the magician likes to be in charge. The magician likes to be in control of what's happening, of what's going on in their realm. And so, they like to have that little bit of power. And at this point in time, Odin's chariot, so the Roman equivalent is Mercury, has just gone into retrograde. So we've got this retreat energy. So Odin and Frigg are both in retreat at the moment. So their thrones are empty. And they give us the challenge. They therefore say, you're in charge. Hi Suzanne, lovely to see you too. So this is why we're looking at this, and I want you to imagine for a moment the goddess Saga. So Saga lives next to a huge body of water. It's not always clear whether it's the sea. I always think of it, it's an estuary, a point where the fresh water and the salt water meet, because estuaries are particularly sacred to Odin. And her hall is called Sokvabek, which means sunken bank. So we know that it's near water. And she is a goddess of history keeping, of writing, of story, also of poetry, of ecstasy. Her name's Saga, is obviously handed down to us through the word saga. So we often think about this as being these long histories written down quite detailed. But she is also a goddess of ecstatic practices, of poetry as well. And normally, when Odin isn't on retreat, he would be coming down in the... I like to think it's in the morning. I'm not sure if I know that it's in the morning. I'm not sure if the Eddas tell us this, or if that's in the lore anywhere. But I like to think he comes down in the morning, and Saga has laid out on her table, on her fine table, golden cups. And she and Odin drink from those golden cups, and they exchange news through the day. So she's one of his advisors. But obviously at the moment, Odin isn't around. He's not available. So what's Saga going to be doing instead? Maybe she sits at the golden table anyway and looks out over the water. Maybe she's busily going, I'll catch up on some other things, that when Odin comes, much as it's nice to see him, I've got my own projects that I want to get on with, or we discussed what I was going to be doing while he was away, or maybe people like you and I are coming and journeying with Saga and finding her advice. The last cohort of Yggdrasil's path that I worked with my shamanic program, we did quite a lot of work with Saga actually. Her hall was very important for that particular group, and we often went to journey to her and visit her and seek her advice and her guidance. So she could be doing plenty of other things. And so through the course of this week, we have Odin's chariot moving into Ansu's, and we also have Sokvabet, we have Saga's hall opening. So Saga's hall is the equivalent of Virgo, a sign for Virgo. And so this is why these two energies are particularly important to us and particularly relevant to us as well when we think of the pathway of the magician, and we think about when your boss, if you're a child, your parents, your figures of authority, your leaders are away, what happens? What do you do? Now, as I was preparing for this session, a number of, I think it was like 2 articles came up in my LinkedIn feed talking about the latest research that has been done into remote working. So you'll know obviously that remote working increased substantively during lockdown, and it was said to increase productivity. Certainly employees were much more happy with it. And then as lockdown has what's the word I'm looking for? Eased, we've started to get this tension between employees who were self-reporting and saying, I'm working much, I'm still working harder, I'm more productive, I feel more productive, and employers who were saying our people aren't being as productive. But it was very much a belief, and it's only just now that research is starting to come out about whether remote working increases productivity or decreases productivity. So we're going to come back to that in a moment. I just wanted to have a look and see what people have said about what would you call your group of people. Esther says, I tend to call my people. Very sensible, Esther. I like it. Very sensible, straightforward. I was thinking about this and thinking I quite like the idea of my circle. These are the people who I would join hands with, and because I think magically, when you work in circle and you join hands with people, and whether you've done any form of energy work, group energy work, you will know that energy starts to flow in a circuit, like around the circle of people when they move together, particularly if you work consciously with that. And it's a beautiful way of working, and there's many different ways that you can work on that and feel that sense of deep connection with other human beings. It's a bit like, I think about my circle as being the people who I would want to do that with. I'm happy to share a bit of energy with you and to be in that flow of energy with you. So for me, I've chosen circle. Lisa says my pack. Yeah, I'm loving that, my pack. It feels like there's a closeness there, isn't there? There's a trust, there's an instinctive trust and a bond that comes through. So it's my invitation to you maybe to think about that. And we're going to be coming back to this in terms of some of the keys of self-leadership, is this idea of who my people are, and who's important to me, who my community are. Becky says, my people are the ones I connect with on that level. Interesting. So is that in the reference then again, maybe to a sort of that energetic connection? Let me know. And Suzanne, you say that when no one is in charge, you get up to shenanigans. I didn't ask that question, but it's good to know. It's good to know that you're getting up to shenanigans. I've got a feeling that your shenanigans would be pretty awesome anyway, Suzanne. And that's important actually as well, is that sense of, maybe that's the first question to ask yourself, is when no one is in charge, what would you choose to do with your time? For some people the answer is, I just lie down. I just lie down. I found it really interesting to sometimes just say, I'm giving myself a day of holiday. I'm not going to plan anything. I'm just going to do the day of holiday and just choose the task that I'm going to do. And interestingly, when the pressure eases, there are some tasks that I've been putting off that during my work days I've been putting off, and then suddenly, because I don't have to do them anymore and that pressure comes through, goes, then I'm like, oh, yes, now I'm going to do it, and it's fine. And then I go, oh, really? Why? Why is it that when you're like, oh, I don't want to, and then suddenly when you don't have to anymore because you've given yourself permission not to do it, then you want to do it. That might just be my inner rebel, possibly my inner rebel coming through there. we've got some other other pieces in here. Maggie, people are going to be myself and be as weird as I am without judgment. Yeah, that's acceptance, that acceptance piece. People who get it, it's saying having that magical connection with others to be your unique self. So that ability to not be censoring yourself comes into that sense of my circle, my pack, my people. It's a really nice insights coming in the chat box. So thank you very, very much. So Saga, we're working on the assumption that for Saga, who knows? Maybe she does lie down. And it's actually quite useful sometimes it's useful to externalize and to visualize somebody else and say, okay, Saga, who's there? She's got her riverbank, she's got her table, she's got her golden cup, she's got her hall, she's got a huge library full of books. She could do anything that she wants to on this day. And sometimes that act of witnessing can be very powerful for us, because we can look at it and we say, okay, what we see Saga doing may well be the thing that we need to do or we want to do. You're engaging the seer there a little bit, Oh, yeah, she's just going and she's sitting and she's reading a book, or she's writing to a friend, she's just connecting in that way. Can help give us some insights when we aren't able to see that within ourselves. Because I think this is one of the really challenging pieces around self-leadership. If you've ever had that expression, I just need to get control of myself, or I need to have a little bit more self-discipline. The question becomes then, what if you need to take control of yourself, what's the bit that's taking control? And that's the challenging bit, is that we are inside ourselves. So how do we actually go about doing that? And this can bring in all sorts of ways in which we can push ourselves to achieve. And that research that I was telling you about with the remote working has come back, and it has found that there isn't, that perhaps the employees' self-reporting of their productivity is perhaps a little bit optimistic. This is still very early days for this research, but there's some questioning now. And even companies like Zoom, who obviously enable fully remote operationalized working, are now asking their employees to come back into the office sometimes, because they've realized that there are dips in productivity. And what I found interesting in reading these articles is what they tend to do is they say, this is the research, the employers want this, the employees want that, there's a big clash, what does the data actually tell us? And then at the very end of the article it says, well, actually what we probably need is something blended, which is probably where we should have started in the first place. I think most people will say, with common sense, that a blended model is going to be important if you're working in an organisation, because you want to physically meet people. You're talking about connecting with your tribe or your pack, and that strength of connection, although we can facilitate really strong, powerful connections, working, particularly if we're very energetically aware, and we can do that work. And those of you who have been in programs and groups will know that it is very possible to achieve very profound connections with people who you've never physically met. Equally, giving someone a hug is an amazing, awesome thing. And when we are working, we might not be hugging each other, in all of our working environments, but we still might need that physical engagement with somebody. Whereas at other times we might need to be separate in a way and being able to work, remotely. And so that blend always seems to me to be quite sensible, that we would need that. But it's an interesting debate, and it comes down to this control piece. Who gets to decide whether we're going to work remotely or not, and when we're going to do that, and if it's flexible, how is it going to be flexible? And to come back to the magician piece, a lot of the time when we are making these judgments about, do I need to work remotely, do I not need to work remotely, what do I need to get done, what do I not need to get done, we are working with an internalized part of ourselves who we say, okay, the rest of me is misbehaving. They are not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, and they're not doing the work, and their productivity has sunk by 18% from where it was. And then we sort of try and find this part of ourselves that then takes charge. And it might feel like a controller, it might feel like a boss, an internal boss or an external boss. It might feel like guilt, you know. A lot of us can use our emotions as motivators to get things done that otherwise we wouldn't get done. A fear of judgment comes through very strongly as well. You know, that fear of being judged. I will use that fear of being judged to do the task that I don't want to do, rather than really looking at what's going on. I certainly used to feel as if my to-do list was a bully. You know, I'd look at my to-do list and I'd go, that to-do list is bullying me. And it didn't matter that I had written the to-do list. It still felt energetically like a bully to me. Which is why working with our magician, who is the part of our magical selves, who gets things done and is the most controlling, or interested in control and interested in bringing their own will and manifesting their own will out into the world. You know, they want to be able to do that. But we're going to look a little bit more at the shadow self of the magician at a later point. What happens when perhaps the magician does take on that persona of the bully or the controller, or becomes very much based in ego. But at the moment we're looking at the positive alchemy of the magician. So let's say for a moment, and I don't know, obviously I know some of you will be self-employed, some of you will be working in different ways, some of you will be in organisations, you know, lots of different ways of how you spend your time, how you choose to spend your time at the moment. But one of the things that I think Odin and Saga very much epitomise, and Suzanne, you just asked the question, do you feel that Saga would see Odin as in charge? It's a very good question. To a certain extent, yes. You know, she has recognised his place on the throne, and she has put herself in his service, in saying, you know, he will come and he will visit her, and she will act as an advisor to him. But I think that that's important, is to recognise that maybe when we think about in charge, it's not as simple as saying, you know, what does actually in charge mean? So for me, there's a sense in which Odin, the buck stops with him. You know, when things go wrong, he will be the one to decide who's going to go and fix them. He'll be the one to decide, you know, how is this going to work. He is the one who will proclaim what needs to happen in the moment. But he is collaborative. He's not collaborative in the sense of Frigg and that sort of feminine energy collaboration. Obviously, Saga is one of Frigg's a senior, so you could argue that Frigg sees Saga as being an independent and autonomous member of her collaborative circle, who she trusts to take judgments in her absence and to, you know, act sensibly and do sensible stuff. Odin is more masculine in his method of collaboration. So he would still probably hold the reins that little bit tighter and still have that sense of, in the name of Odin, someone might say. Saga might not feel it necessary to say in the name of Frigg, because she would say, well, I am one of Frigg's handmaidens, and therefore, you know, I am independent and I have a realm of my own, which is poetry and writing and all of those things. Whereas Odin, perhaps there might be a little bit more of, like, in the name of, a little bit more hierarchy coming through than on the feminine style of collaboration. But Odin is still collaborative, which we can see from the fact that he seeks advice and counsel from Saga. And you don't give your advice and counsel to someone unless you trust them that they're actually going to take it on board. And so to that extent, I would say that Saga does recognise Odin's sovereignty in that sense. But it was a good question. And important, I think, when we think about the magician, that both Frigg and Odin will look at the world. They might look at a problem, or they might look at a challenge, or what's happening in the moment, and they will say, what elements need to be put in place in order for us to get from A, the present moment, to B, the future moment that I have connected to through my vision. I've connected to this vision of what the world could be like, and it could be a very small thing, it could be a small project, or it could be a very large and a very big vision. We talked about Gandalf last week, didn't we? And this idea that Gandalf sees that, you know, he doesn't see all of the details, but he sees that Sauron is rising, and, you know, the ring and all of these things, and he knows that this impossible task needs to be created, and so he starts to put in place all of the different elements of a plan that might need to happen in order that this objective will be reached, that he knows he cannot do alone. Now, Odin and Frigg are very similar in the ways that they would look at this. They would say, we're in charge of quite large stuff, so we're going to do this collaboratively. Now, what I want you to think about at this moment is to think about Saga more. So Saga, her hall is opening later in the week, and she is at the moment she's alone because Odin isn't coming and visiting her, and she might have people like us coming and journeying to her and seeking her advice and counsel, but she is alone in the sense of holding her area of responsibility without having Frigg or Odin to call on for assistance or guidance if she needs them. So when you are your own boss, or when you might be in discussion with your bosses about things like, now the world seems to be moving away from remote working because this new research has come through that suggests that maybe that's a good thing, even though there are all sorts of caveats and grey areas around actually a blended mode might be the most sensible. What do I need to do in order to take self-leadership in this moment? And what I'm going to suggest to you is that there are 4 elements. So the magician, imagine they create their magical circle and they've got the 4 quarters, whatever it is. So you might think about these things as being the 4 foundation stones, the 4 pillars, the 4 ways of working that you need to have in place in order for you to get from the present moment as I see it to the future moment where something has changed or something has shifted. So the first thing that you're going to need to look at is your own levels of energy, and that is your emotional energy. Like, where am I right now? Are my emotions attuned and aligned to me actually doing this thing, or is there some work that I need to do to release those emotions? Where am I physically? If I'm exhausted, am I going to be able to get from A to B? And if I'm not, maybe the first step is going to be to manage that exhaustion. Where is my spiritual energy right now? Do I feel connected? Do I feel part of, do I feel earth connected? Do I feel sky connected? Do I feel connected to source, to purpose, to, have I had a chat with Saga today to see, what advice she might have, what guidance she might have? And what are your levels of mental energy as well? If your brain's doing this, round and round and round, how able are you to get from A to B? So that piece around managing your energy levels is very important. And obviously what I'm doing is bringing a number of quite big tasks instead of saying these are the 4 things that need to be in place. And it might be that there are long-term emotional challenges or mental challenges or physical challenges that you need to be working through. But there might also be things that you can do in the immediate moment to up some of those levels for you. So for me, the environment that I'm working in will deeply impact my access to the correct mental and emotional energy levels for me to move on. So for example, when I prepare for these sessions in the morning, I don't do it in this space. I go out and I do it. Lots of different reasons for that, but I'm not going into right now. Ask me if you're interested, but a lot to do with my birth runes as to why that's important for me. So that is your first piece. It's your own energy levels. Foundation stone number 1. Foundation stone number 2 is your own level of training, expertise, and innate talent in relation to the task that you want to do. If you have the training, if you feel like you're an expert, if you have all of that confidence, this is going to be an easy task. Or maybe you've got a little bit of innate talent, or you're excited about learning something and you don't mind if it goes a bit wrong all of the time, then that's absolutely fine. But just gauging that, and if you don't have the right levels of training, if you don't have the right levels of expertise or the talent, then who else can you ask who does? Becomes the question. Or where do you get that training? So that becomes the next piece. In order to get from A to B, what are the what is the training, the expertise, the experience, the innate talent that I have that is going to allow me to do this this task? And I can see that people have said that there's a bit of interference going on. I have not got anything showing at my end, but as you know, for whatever reason, I can't see what's happening on on the screen, so I don't have the indicator that's telling me whether the frequency is working or not. So I'm sorry, but Candice, you're saying it's easing off. Good. Okay. What I will do probably is in my blog, I will summarize these 4 points for you, so you can go back and you can look at them. So number 3 is then your engagement, and what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the motivation that you receive from the vision and from the values that are held. So let's say that if this is your project, it's like, this is a project and I can see that end of B, where B is, where I want to get to. How invested are you in B? You know, if you're working for somebody else and they're saying, please can you do this task, and actually you're like, really does not light my fire, it'll be much harder for you to keep going with that, completing that task, than if you are invested in that. Equally, it's not just about the vision, it's also about the how. So there's the vision, but there's also the values. So if you are working with a company who has a brilliant vision, and yet they are, I don't know, they like to cut corners, they don't have a great equality and diversity policy, they're not investing ethically, then your values are being betrayed, and it's going to be very difficult for you to motivate yourself to move forward to complete tasks for that company. So that's going to be a drain. And what that's going to do is, over time, that's going to impact on number 1, on your emotional, mental, physical and spiritual well-being, if you carry on with that for too long. So you want to look at that. If you're with a company, you want to look at the, do I share the vision and the values of the company? If it's a task that you set for yourself, you just want to look at what are the underlying vision and values that I'm using when I bring this task into fruition. And then number 4, it comes back to our pack, our tribe, our circle. It's that accountability piece. Even if you are a natural mystic or a deep introvert, you are still, even then, going to have times when you have the need for your circle or your pack or your chosen people to say, you're doing a great job. Now, I'm so proud of you. Isn't this amazing that you have, you've chosen to do this thing and it's not been easy and you're still going forward? It's a huge motivator. For others, maybe if you are a natural healer or a magician, or you are a big extrovert, you're going to need that even more, that accountability. And this is this piece around remote working as well. It's sort of saying, well, if remote working doesn't allow me to forge the depth of connection that I need with my people in order to carry out those tasks day by day, how do I receive that? How do I get that depth of connection? So, for me, for example, before lockdown, I was working as a consultant, and I worked just 1 day a week in the office, and on those days I always prioritized going out and meeting with people. I didn't go in and just sit at my desk in the corner and not speak to people, because that would not have been forging the connections that I needed in order to get that accountability and that strong rapport and that ability to understand that there might be other people who had the training or the expertise or the knowledge that I needed to bring the project forward, and it filled my emotional wellspring. All of these reasons why it would alchemize my work, without it being I need to be in work all of the time. It's actually like, what are the elements that I need in order to bring that through? So through the course of this week, remembering that we are really working on intention setting, on creating patterns of being and ways of being that we want to see coming our way in the future. We're like setting a new vibration. Right, think about it that way, a new vibration of the magician and self-leadership and what I want to be doing in the world, that's then going to draw opportunities for you in the months and the years to come. So it's important to sow these seeds at this point. What do you need in order to have that strong sense of self-leadership, so that you're not having to rely on these more like negative, like the bully or the controller or the boss or guilt or shame or anger or anything else to drive you forward to achieve what you want to achieve in the world, that you're actually attaching that really positive energy that is flowing with you and working with your natural energy, that you are tying your energy and your time to a fabulous vision, that you're living in the values that you want to. All of these things, sow those seeds during this time. So that is our energy, that's our container for this week, bearing in mind our Odin in retrograde. So Odin, he's left the building, but Saga is present. Her hall is opening to us at this point. Let's have a look at some runes to support us, some runes that will be our spirit guides through this time. I've got 6 runes, so they've come forward quite strongly, so I'm going to stick with the 6 runes that wanted to speak today, but I'm going to have a little look now at what what runes other people have brought, that you have brought if you are here live. If you are not here live, please do hashtag replay, say how this topic has landed with you, what's important, what would you call your human tribe, what are your thoughts on self-leadership, remote working, the 4 elements that I've just discussed of the magician, and absolutely share your rune. So we have got Suzanne, you've got Thurisaz. I think we did Thurisaz last week, I want to say, so we're not going to be doing it this week, but it's just remembering that Frigg's chariot in retrograde. It could still be that there's some deeper energy for you that's coming through. What's the word I'm looking for? Just some things that feel like blocks. And it's like, is this a block? Is it there to protect me in some way? What's Thurisaz trying to protect me from? Am I okay with that? Again, it's sort of looking at the magician a little bit and saying, what's this rune trying to help me with? How can I bring that into my conscious mind? So any events that come through that feel that they're annoying, it's like, what would happen if I imagined that somebody had actually put those blocks in place in order to protect me? It might be that it's a well-intentioned someone and that they're not doing it right in some way, in which case you can call that out. But it's like you want to imagine that Thurisaz is there as an unconscious protector in some way. And it's doing its best, but it doesn't have freaking Odin to guide it, so it might not always be doing what you actually want it to. Lisa, you've got Iwaz. We are going to be looking at Iwaz. That's your lunar rune. So the rune that you're working with through the course of the full month. And then you've got Tewaz for today. We're going to be looking at Tewaz, I think, next week. There's this interesting juxtaposition of your Iwaz rune and your Tewaz rune, because they both have this real sense of standing in integrity, that truth. So that values piece is really important for you. But there might be a little bit of tension in terms of the Tewaz rune wanting to shoot forward, and the Iwaz rune saying let's stick and be more steady with our progress. You might need to be managing that energy a little bit. Esther, my lunar rune is Perthro. Rune of the week is Thurisaz. Rune of the day is Iwaz. So I've done a bit of Thurisaz, we've done a bit of Iwaz. We did Perthro last week. Nothing else is coming through for Perthro at this point, Esther, so we will leave it at that one. And let me see who else has shared a rune before I share with you the other runes. Carol, lovely to see you. Yes, I am very well. So you've got Uruz and Wunyo. So Wunyo is my rune for the night and Uruz is my subconscious. Oh, I like those themes. Those are really lovely. And we are actually working with Uruz and Wunyo, so that is great. Okay, let us look at our runes. So these are the runes that have come forward for helping us to think about the magician in the context of self-leadership. So let's start with Uruz. So Uruz has come through really from that place of tenacity and looking at your levels of emotional, physical, spiritual and mental well-being as being directly related to your ability to bring change into the world. So this is important this is very important for the magician self, because the magician self can become so important. Thank you, Candice, Miss Ryan, thank you. It's actually much easier for me if you share the runes later on, because then I'll be able to see them. But at the moment I'm scrolling through, so thank you, Candice. I'll come back to your Faye there. So with the Uruz rune, it is for the magician. The magician can get very excited about a brand new project. I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and there can be a push through energy that comes, whether it comes from the negative side of the bully or the controller or the judge, or whether it comes from that I'm so connected to the vision, I want to bring this forward, it's just going to be amazing. Without the self-regulation of the magician can become but can burn out very, very quickly. So the Uruz rune comes in and says Remember your foundational elements, and remember that the other aspects of your magical self, your healer, your seer, your mystic, are just as important. You can't stay in magician all the time. You need to be able to call, just like Odin calls on Saga. He goes down, he speaks to her every day. He says, what do you think about this? He brings in other perspectives. This is what Uruz says, and particularly the healer brings in the healer, and it says, how do I gauge my levels today of where I am emotionally, where I am physically, where I am spiritually, where I am mentally? And you can sometimes do that. Literally, it can be a case of saying, if I cast my mind back through my life, when was there a time when I felt emotionally really just in a great place? Where was a time in my life when physically I felt in a great place? And how do I contrast that with right now? Can give you a bit of a sense of your own gauge, because sometimes it can be difficult if we're veering towards, energetically we're burning out because the magician's been pushing too hard for too long. We can forget and think that this is normal. And so Uruz comes forward and says, ain't normal. And if you're actually feeling like, I'm in a pretty good place, I'm okay right there, then Uruz says, well, look to your pack, look to your circle. Is there someone in your circle who is struggling? Who may need that foundation stone of self and soul care to be bolstered a bit so that they can bring what they need into the world. If you have a plenitude of energy, who might need a little bit of that for you? Candy, so let's do Feiyu for you now, because actually that felt as if maybe it came up at the opportune time for you. So with Feiyu reversed, the magician will grab hold of all Feiyu energy and say, yeah, I can run with that. It's that moment when you wake up in the morning and you were feeling really awful. A few days I've just felt awful, I've been really awful, and then you wake up and it's gone, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. It's like your Feiyu energy has reconnected in some way. And then you use it, and you go, oh, I'm using it. That's great. And then, because you haven't necessarily done the Uruzi bit of where does it come from? How is it tethered to? How do I sustain this in the long term? How do I make this a foundation stone and not just a serendipitous surge of energy at this point in time? You can get to the point where you get Feiyu reverse. Now for you, Candice, what I'm feeling is that it might be about looking for patterns of when it's like, right, Feiyu energies come through, go with it, and then it's going to crash a little bit. But it might also be about saying there's a part of you that learns from that and says, when the Feiyu energy comes, I don't even want to use a tiny bit of it because I know that crash is coming next. So it's that is where the Feiyu energy reverse comes in, and it's seeking for the earth. It's seeking to plug itself into the earth. So I would actually suggest for you that it's the Uruz rune that you might want to work with a bit more there, to say the Feiyu energy needs that container to help it to flow. So I hope that's helpful there. Our next rune that we're going to be looking at, our spirit guide rune for the magician, self-leadership of the magician, is the Suelo rune. And the Suelo is very much about guidance, and it connects us beautifully with all of the parts of the magical identity, but we're going to be thinking about it in terms of the magician. And there is an element of trust that's important here for the Suelo rune. One of the, again, shadow sides of the magician is that belief that they can have, that if they don't do everything, if I'm not in charge of everything, if I don't know where everything is, everything's going to fall into place, and I need to have all the I's dotted, T's crossed and the I's dotted, there we go, I was okay. Then, first of all, it doesn't leave any room for collaboration. We talked about collaboration with Saga and Frigg and Odin earlier. It doesn't leave any room for collaboration because the magician has to be in charge of everything. And it also eventually will stop the magician from doing everything, because obviously we can't ever be fully in control of everything. So the Suelo rune for the magician energetically is working, chanting with the Suelo rune, drawing its energy down into the body. Also perhaps using it as a shield. You can use it quite nicely. Imagine it turning. So you turn the Suelo rune like that. Imagine it being drawn over the body, particularly the solar plexus, realm of the will. And then you imagine it as a golden light which grows bigger and bigger, and it creates a shield that stops negative energy, doubts, other people's worries, other people's concerns coming through and piercing your energy body, which is helpful, because what the Suelo rune gifts the magician is faith. And again, the magician can draw on that through working with the healer and the seer and the mystic, but they can also shortcut by using the Suelo rune to feel that sense of faith, which comes from the magician, first of all, from faith in self. You know, I've got faith in myself, I can do this, and I can do this because I have faith that the universe has my back, because I have faith that the right expertise will come at the right time. You know, I am becoming a magnet for what I need. I am shielding with the Suelo rune what I don't need, and I am drawing in with the Suelo rune what I do need. You know? So really great rune to work with for magicians when you're feeling either as if I'm moving towards burnout, or I'm feeling as if I have to do everything myself and make this really, really difficult and I must be in control. Suelo rune really helps with that. For those of you who've worked with me before, if you've done any of my workshops where we've worked with Suelo, you will know that there is a fluidity to the energy of the Suelo rune which really helps with any rigidity and structure that the magician in particular can bring in. Next rune we are going to work with for this week. Let's see who's coming up is the Iwas rune. So Lisa, I know you had the Iwas rune, didn't you? We were talking a little bit about the Iwas rune as being the establisher of rhythm. So we want to think about the Iwas rune here as being the staff that supports, but has also been created by the magician. Now this also comes back to the foundation stones that I mentioned. So it's almost like your staff becomes the physical representation of those foundation stones, and said, yes, when you have put those in place, you can lean on me. I will support you. I will know that even though the project seems really, really big, I have the energy available, I have the training and the expertise, or I have the availability of other people who have that for me. I have the vision, you know, that's drawing me on, that will keep me walking day after day after day with my trusty staff beside me, and I have that that community. So what you might want to think about here is any forms of reminders that you can make of those elements to support the magician. When you think about, it could be a staff, but it could also be a wand. You could think about it as a wand, and you could think about how would I bring in the elements that I need into my wand as a magical act that then directs my project as I'm moving forward. So you could, you know, if you're somebody who likes to whittle, I used to make loads of wands. You know, would be out before I had children, and I used to just have my little whittling knife in a leather pouch, and I would go out, and if I found a branch or something like that, I would just grab it. And it means that you can create a wand, a representation of the will, and you can make it very specific. So you can draw in what you need in this moment as an act of magic, and say, okay, you know, so what is the tribe that I want to call in right now? Who are the humans that I need? What is the energy that I need to call in right now? And even if you don't have particular symbols, just in the act of whittling or carving your wand, while visualizing the outcome of what you want to achieve, and while visualizing the elements that you would need to have in place for that outcome to be achieved, when you've finished your wand, you have a perfect magical object to use, that you can then, you know, cast a circle for yourself every time you want to work on that project, every time you want to be in that particular energy. So, you know, you could do it not necessarily for a project, but for something where, you know, I work with clients, and how do I want my clients to feel when they come into my space? How do I want them to be protected? What sort of environment do I want to have in? Are there spirit guides that I work with? And you can create that with your, you can make a wand that does that, and then before every time you work with a client, you create a space for you and your client using the wand, and you have already set that intention. So you can be very specific in the way that you work with that. So that's the Iwas rune there, that you can have a little bit of a play with the magician's self. This is our next spirit guide rune is the Wunyo rune. I was quite excited when the Wunyo rune came up. So this is actually the last rune that I drew when asking which runes we'll be working with, but it's come up now. And this is the sense of, again, thinking about those foundation pieces and recognizing what would the world be like if you knew, and this is just a belief, that your desires, your pleasure, your happiness, and the purpose that you had come to fulfill in this world were the same. What would that be like? It was like, actually, by pursuing my desire, you know, with, I want to say with discipline, but I don't mean discipline as in you will pursue your desire. I mean it as becoming a disciple to finding more pleasure, finding more fulfillment, finding more joy in my life is the most powerful thing that I can do in order for me to fulfill my purpose and my destiny in this world. What would be possible for me then? And then again, you can think about that in terms of the magician, the energy of the magician, that we're not doing bullying, controlling, guilt. We're doing pleasure, we're doing invitation, we're doing possibility, we're doing opportunism in this moment. And the magician then starts to invite in, the mystic who's saying, wow, this might be available, or the seer who says, I choose this. This is the choice, this is the right for me. That's what becomes possible again. So it's thinking about the pleasure that can be available for the magician self, and the way in which, instead of working on the basis of work, I am working to create those 4 foundation stones, it becomes, how can I play into them more? What could I do to raise my energy levels in a way that feels playful for me? So I do a lot of dance, I do a lot of embodiment work, because I found that, that really lifts my energy levels and I enjoy it. And so it becomes part of that runyo, that place of joy, of fulfillment, and also of belonging. Thinking about, if I think less about, I need to be, I like remote working because I want to be away from people, or I hate remote working because I want to be with people, and think about it more in terms of actually what are those interactions that I want to have, what do I look forward to when I'm working in a space where others are physically with me, and when I'm working in a space where others are with me on the screen, or where I'm doing neither. I love working in cafes. I get so much done when I'm working in cafes. So I'm technically alone. I'm not working with co-workers at this point, but I can see other people are around me, and it's, I don't know why, but it just really soothes me, and I become much more productive in that moment. And what I chose to do, and I did it many years ago now, and I was featured in a book because of it, book on wealth management, was I was offered a promotion for a job, and I thought about the promotion, and it meant extra hours. I was working part-time at the time, which worked well for me because I had a young child at that point, and I was offered the promotion, and it was, if you take the promotion, it will be full-time. And we looked at the numbers, and I was like, okay, I will do this if the numbers work to the point that it means that I can work for 40 minutes in a cafe in the morning each day, to do that transition from like home Maggie, where I'm mummy and wife and things like that, to work Maggie that is for me, where I do my planning for the day when my magician self comes out. That worked pretty well for a period of time. Didn't work ultimately for me in the end, but I wanted more time in the cafe, let's be honest. But it worked for me for a period of time. So you can say, what is going to make me work at my best? And the one-year room can help you with that. Which ones have we got left to work with? We have got, here we go, Manas. So Manas is a great rune to work with for the magician. It's the rune of the divine human. It is the rune of self-expression, if you imagine. It is often seen to symbolise Odin on the throne. Also bearing in mind that Odin shares his throne with Frigg, so it's not just his. But it is that point where we are enthroned, which is what the magician represents. It's the enthroned human who is taking responsibility, who is becoming the magic, who is wielding the magic, is all part of the Manas rune. So if you receive the Manas rune through the course of this week, this might be about claiming your power as a magician, about looking back at this and saying, okay, if it comes reversed, it might be about looking at, where do I feel as if I am unable to control the elements, those 4 foundational elements. I don't have enough control in my life in order for me to manage my energy levels, or connect with a vision or the values, or get the training that I want, or be in touch with the tribe that I would like. And it says, how can I take my power you know, and reclaim that power. And it might be about taking small steps, about saying, okay, at the moment, the situation that I'm in might be one where I do feel as if I'm controlled or a victim of this situation. I'm not able to get myself out of it. So it can be about just saying, what are the steps that I can take towards greater sovereignty in each of these areas? So that's what the man-as rune is asking you to do. If you feel as if you're, excuse me, just let me tap my water, there we go. If you feel as if actually, I'm quite a good place with this, then it's what's the next step? What might the next step be for me? And how can I, bearing in mind that piece around Odin, saying, well, I'm going on retreat now, there are others who can be in charge. It might be about that collaborative piece a bit more, about saying, well, how can I, if I'm fully in my magician, often the next steps can be about saying, how can I work more deeply in collaboration? How can I, again, let go of a bit more control and trust that my energy is now sufficiently strong that I will draw in what I need for my vision in the world to come into fruition, even if I'm not tending to every single detail. So those are sort of next step pieces for the magician there with the man-as rune. And the final rune that we are going to work with today is Dargaz, which is the rune of the day. And this can be about sudden transformation. And I really like it as the a magician rune because it reminds me of the tarot. It reminds me of the path of the fool and the magician on the tarot. It's this sort of Mobius loop infinity symbol that sometimes is represented on the staff of the magician as sort of being at the top, where the magician has the mastery of all of the elements, so the sort of master of transformation that comes through. And again, this can be very much about claiming that space of saying, yes, I am able to, or I want to more, move from the magician into the seer, into the healer. Sometimes I can be on the path of the fool, you know, and then suddenly find myself on the path of the magician. It reminds me that Dargaz, one of the secret powers of Dargaz is the power of the stupid question. There is, well, there are many things worse than, but one of the things that I used to find deeply debilitating and frustrating in big meetings, often meetings of quite senior people, would be when there might be like a question, like a burning question that was in the room, like the elephant in the room or the thing like that, and no one would ask it, including me, just to be really clear. No one would ask it, either because they thought that they might look foolish because the question had already been asked and they'd missed it at some point, or because it was going to create, you know, conflict and difficulty, or it might be a bit emotional and no one wanted to be the person who got everyone to be emotional. You know, let's just focus on the facts and on the paper at hand rather than going, I think there might be a real big problem that the two people who are arguing across the table don't like each other. Perhaps you should go and sort that out. You know, go away, have your little fight, and then come back, and then we can have an adult conversation at that point. You know? But no one asked that. Everyone's like, oh, just politely sit here while these two people pretend that they are arguing about whatever is on the agenda, when actually it's about something entirely different. You know, that could have been going on for years. You know, and I laugh at that, but some of the most helpful moments when I look back and think, when did I contribute the most value in, you know, a group setting like that? Well, when I asked that question, when I said, I remember saying, I'm really sorry, I'm just feeling like, you know, I'm really sorry to ask this question, but I'm sure that this agenda item was on the agenda 18 months ago before I went on maternity leave. Have I missed something? You know? And everyone in the room was a bit silent, and they're like, well, actually, yes, it has been on the agenda for the last 18 months and it hasn't been resolved. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And they did, you know, they had this conversation about it, but it was just, you know, it's this elephant in the room questions where you don't ask it because you think you're going to look stupid. And then when you ask it, you go, actually, I don't look stupid, we all look stupid. Because why is this on the agenda for 18 months? Because it can't be resolved, you know, and then we can start to actually have a conversation about it. So I want you to think about less about Dargaz as being a gateway that you pass through, which is often the way it presents, and more about how can I be more dargaz? How can I be more dargaz? And just ask the really obvious question. You know? Be that point where we say, I'm just going to say the truth of this situation as I see it right now. And obviously there are elegant ways that you can do that so that you're not just going, stop fighting with each other, for the love of God. You know, you can ask it in some way about how can I do that? Because sometimes that is the power of the magician, is just to say the right thing at the right time to bring that through. So have a little bit of a play with your Dargaz rune. So let's see what people have said, any responses. Interesting. So Lisa, you're saying the staff definitely featured in the vision that came with the rune. For you, for Iwaz. Candice, there is just something about working by yourself in a bus in a coach. That gets the cogs turning. It really does, doesn't it? It's like no one else is invested, so your energies aren't entangled with anybody else's, and yet their energy is in momentum, so it helps you. You know, that I think that's often the piece. You're not stagnant. You know. My birth runes are very fast moving birth runes, so I like to be in fast moving locations. They help me go. Sometimes you just need to have the guts to speak up. It can make you feel very vulnerable, yet actually get things moving again. Yes, absolutely. Like being the magician in that sense. And Carol, you're saying Uruz really suits where you are in the present moment. Wonderful. So enjoy your week of feeling into the self-leadership of the magician, of trying out, like working with the runes. Obviously you can work with those 6 runes that came forward as spirit guides, but you can also have your lunar rune or a rune that you want to work with for the day. And let me know how that works for you. Let me know what's landed strongly for you, what you work with. You can either put it in the chat, in the hearth space, or on the YouTube channel, or on the blog, or you can also message me. And at the moment, I think that you know I'm just working on my coaching clients for September. I've filled one of those places. I've got one more for September available. So if you are thinking, actually, I would really like some help to mobilise my magician to get things going as I want them to go, and to use my magical gifts and my magical talents more out there in the world, let me know, and I would love to hear from you. So take care, everybody, and I will see you very soon.